Good afternoon, my dears. Welcome back to the afternoon session of the Chad Daybell trial on disorder in the court. Please remember to hit the like button. Thank you very much, Chopper, for reminding people to hit the like button. Welcome, everybody else. So we are continuing the cross-examination of law enforcement, detailing the incidents surrounding Tammy Daybell's shooting, people shooting at her. It was Alex Cox, we now know. I don't know what y'all did on your break, but on my break, I grabbed more coffee and I checked out a rather boring hearing for Turtle Boy. Turtle Boy is the YouTube guy, is the YouTuber who basically created a cult called Free Karen Reed. So Karen Reed's trial is probably going to start opening statements on Monday. And they will continue jury selection starting tomorrow. They took today off. But there was a hearing today on Zoom for her propagandist, Turtle Boy, who is in legal trouble himself for allegedly intimidating witnesses. And so this hearing that they were holding was really more, it was a pre-trial hearing, and it was your typical type of hearing where you hear the defense complaining about the state not giving over enough evidence or, providing evidence in a timely manner. And the state had a very sick prosecutor on Zoom with his oxygen tubes in his nose, and he had apparently been hospitalized. And seems like he's still ailing. And hey, Chopper. And it seems like he's still ailing. Yeah. And I think I might have been watching the same stream you were, Rhodes, because I saw your name pass by, but I was just lurking. And I saw a lot of people going, man, you got to replace this guy. And it seems like he should be replaced, but at the same time, it's just not that simple to replace a prosecutor, who's been working on something. Mello is the prosecutor in Massachusetts, where Turtle Boy is being tried for witness intimidation, and where the Karen Reed case is being held.
Thank you. Please be seated.
And here's the jury. I'm sorry. Here's the court.
We could have the jurors brought in, please.
Sure.
I know it seems like they could replace him. He says maybe they're just really small jurisdiction. They're not used to having this much going on. Yeah, I want to watch his trial too. It's not even clear that it's going to go to trial, though. It does. I think it's a lot easier said than done to replace somebody who has been working on a case, for quite some time. However, on the other side of the coin, it seems like sometimes prosecutors or lawyers, whatever, when they get super involved in a case, they don't want to let go of it, and so they're going to keep going until they die. For instance, you guys, I worked with Steve Jobs, okay? I knew he was sick before the world knew he was sick. And he was bound and determined to continue running that company until his mind was no longer in a place to be able to run the company. It didn't matter that his body was as weak. It was like a 99-pound body. He needed to run that company until he knew his brain couldn't do it anymore. And he did it right up until days before he died. It wasn't very long before he died that he finally said, okay, Tim Cook is taking over. That's just how some people are. And I'm not saying Mello's on his deathbed or anything. I'm just saying they get a sense of importance. It does keep your mind sharp, and it keeps your mind off of your illness. I think, but they get a sense of indispensability. Hey, She-Wolf. And in some cases, it's true that people are indispensable. I don't know if it's totally true that Mello is indispensable. I think Steve Jobs was fairly indispensable for what he did at the time, so it was more understandable for him to want to hang on until he just couldn't anymore. Does that make sense?
Here's all for the council, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Please be seated. We are back on the record on case CR 22-21-1623, State of Idaho versus Chad Guy Daybell. Concluded our lunch recess. Court notes the presence of the prosecution as well as the defendant and counsel for the defendant. In addition, the jurors have all returned and are properly seated. Deputy Cannon is on the stand and has previously been sworn. And I will note that based on a request from counsel to end slightly early today, the court's intention would be to take evidence going forward from now until 3:00 and forego the normal afternoon recess in order to stop a little early but not be interrupted by the recess. So hopefully, if the jurors are able to make it through that time, we'll go ahead and recess today at 3:00 without a mid-afternoon break. However, if for whatever reason you do need a break, just please advise the bailiffs or the court and we'll do that. So
this judge
with that in mind,
hours.
Mr. Wixom, I believe you were conducting direct still of this witness and you can continue.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you for being a member for 2 months, She-Wolf.
So Deputy Cannon, I believe we left off and I was asking you about what you first did when you arrived at the location.
Yes.
Okay. And what was it that you first did when you arrived?
I drove through the area looking for the suspect in that area. So,
And what was the description of the suspect that you were looking for?
a male wearing all black clothing and a black ski mask.
And what did you find, if anything?
We didn't locate anybody in the area matching that description.
When you say was there other law enforcement helping?
Yes, there's another deputy that responded to the area as well.
When you responded and looked for that person with that description, did you do that from your patrol vehicle? Did you do it on foot? How did you do it?
Yes, it was from the roadways in the area. We drove through the areas and tried to look for anybody matching that description from our vehicles.
And once that was completed, what was the next thing that you did?
I went to the Daybell residence and contacted Tammy at the front door.
Right. And what, if anything, happened in that conversation?
Yeah, so I contacted Tammy by knocking on the front door. She answered the door. I just kind of tried to get her information, what happened. She told me that she had just got back from grocery shopping, was getting groceries out of the backseat of her car. noticed a male standing at the rear of the vehicle. She confronted him and asked him what he wanted. He didn't say anything. He just held up the gun, and she heard 2 pops and then yelled for her husband, Chad, and that he eventually came outside.
Okay. While you were talking to Tammy, did you have any contact with Chad?
I didn't have contact. I didn't talk to him. He was there present when we were having that conversation though.
Where was he relative to where you and Tammy were having the conversation?
So we were standing by the front door of his residence, and him and his son was actually standing back towards the kitchen area, maybe 10, 15 feet from us.
Any question from your perspective that he would have been hearing the conversation you were having?
Absolutely, he would have heard it.
And when you were there talking to Tammy, were you wearing a uniform with a gun and a badge?
Yes, I was.
Did anything at any time during your interaction with Tammy, did Chad attempt to talk to you in any way?
No.
Anything about that unusual to you?
I thought it was kind of odd that she had just been like victimized and he wasn't taking any actions to protect her in a way, I guess, but that was just my thoughts personally.
Did that play into your investigation at the time at all?
No, not really, just that it was odd.
What did you do next, if anything?
After that, I went outside. I walked around the initial area where the vehicle was, looking for any shell casings or paintball marks or anything like that in the area.
Does a paintball gun typically have a shell casing?
No.
So why did you say you were looking for shell casings?
If it was possibly a firearm and not a paintball gun.
And did you find any indication either way?
No, I did not.
What did you do next, if anything?
I went and talked to Joseph Murray, who was across the street chopping wood. I spoke to him for a brief moment, just trying to figure out what he saw. And that he told me that he heard Tammy scream and he saw a male run around the north side of the property.
Was there anything contradictory between what Tammy had said and what Joe had said?
No, there wasn't.
At that point, did you do anything further or did you leave the property?
I cleared from the scene, unable to locate any suspect or that.
After that incident on the 9th of October, do you recall ever going back to that address?
Not on the property at all. I might have drove past the property, but I didn't go to the home.
Did you ever participate in any searches on that property?
Yes, later on in the next year.
To the best you recall, what was the date that you participated in that search?
It was January 3rd,
Of what year?
2020.
What were you there searching for?
We did a search warrant on Mr. Daybell's home. I helped the FBI sift through the snow, again, looking for any shell casings, any evidence that we could possibly find of a gun being used there.
So at either point, did you find any evidence of any bullet or any traces of any shots in any buildings, anything like that?
Not to my knowledge, no.
So as far as you sit there today, would there have been anything else you could do to investigate that particular call?
And me personally, no.
No, I have no further questions at this time.
All right, thank you, Mr. Wixom. Mr. Pryor, cross-examination.
Thank you, Judge.
Put that in your memory. His name is Wixom, because I forgot his name earlier. Okay, Pryor. Okay. Right. Okay. Right. Frankly, Judge, I object. Judge, I object.
Officer Coulter, you made an initial report in regards to this case. Is that right?
Yes, I did.
Okay, and the initial report was relatively brief.
Yes.
You recall that?
Yes, I do.
And then you made a subsequent report afterwards. Do you recall that as well?
Yes.
What's the time frame between the initial report and the subsequent report?
Uh, I don't recall exactly the time difference between them.
Okay.
I didn't look at that.
Was it a week?
No, I think it was further out, maybe a month or so, 2 months. I'm not 100% sure.
Okay, and then you also made some comments about not wearing a body cam on that day. Is that right?
Yes, I didn't have a body cam on me that day.
You were a patrol officer, is that right?
Yes, I was.
Standard issue to have a body cam?
It was lost, or it was broken and lost. So
When did you break it?
couldn't tell you exact date.
Did you try to replace it the same time you realized that it was broken, or did you wait a little while?
I informed my sergeant that it was broken.
Okay. And then you went on a call and you didn't have any body cam to actually accurately reflect what was transpiring that day, correct?
No, I didn't have body cam.
Okay. And Judge, could we utilize the HDMI?
You gonna publish something, Mr. Pryor?
I want to show the officer a copy of his report if at all possible.
Okay, are you gonna do that by giving him a copy or publishing it?
I'd like to publish it and have him look at it while I speak to him about it, if that's acceptable to the court.
From the defense, any objection to doing that?
No objection, Your Honor, so long as he admits it as an exhibit. I'm not sure he should be publishing things to the jury that aren't
Judge,
admitted.
I can do it the other way and ask the officer when he did his report, but he doesn't have a recollection of when he did the supplement, and there's 3 parts to this report. So my hope is that to show him the report, lay the proper foundation, and then I'll move to admit defense exhibit 89. But if the court prefers a different manner, we can go a different way.
Okay, well, it's up to you. We just can't publish it until it's been admitted. I agree, so that in case it's not admitted, the jury doesn't already see it.
Okay.
So however you want to handle that, and if the state doesn't object, then we can perhaps shortcut that.
And Judge, can I have my laptop approach the witness with a copy of my laptop, show him the reports, and have him authenticate the reports?
Yeah, perhaps maybe just ask Mr. Wixom and show him what you've got and see if the state is going to object. I think he's indicating maybe he's not.
Judge, we're not going to object to that approach at all.
So it's 89.
89, and the parts are A, B, and C, Judge.
All right. Well, if you just want to move for the admission, then,
I'll move for admission then, Judge.
No objection.
all right. Defense exhibits 89, A, B, and C
Yes,
are
Judge.
admitted. And what are are they 3 separate reports, or what are the exhibits? If you just describe them for the record.
Judge, A would be the initial report, which is about a paragraph. B would be approximately a 2-paragraph report that was done, I believe, a couple months later. And C would be just the initial incident report by Officer Coulter, the face page of the incident report.
Okay, and we'll just need to be able to make sure to get those submitted into the record for evidence, but you may go ahead with those now admitted and publish, and we'll make sure the court receives copies so they can
Okay.
be given to the jurors for deliberation.
And Judge, whenever the clerk is ready to bring that up.
Yes, it can be published.
Now, do you recognize this report, officer?
Yes, I do.
And is that your report?
Yes, that is.
And that's a true and accurate reflection of what you prepared close in time to when the incident occurred. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. So if you would do me a favor and read the very first sentence.
I was dispatched to a suspicious call of a male holding a paintball gun at a lady on 1900 East and 200 North.
Now, 1900 East and 200 North is Chad Daybell's property. Is that right?
Well, that's the intersection.
The intersection.
Yeah.
And Mr. Daybell's property is on the corner of which would be the northwest corner. Does that sound right?
Northeast.
Northeast corner. I'm sorry, I got my east and west backwards. Okay. Now, when you first testified for the prosecution, your comment was in regards to a paintball or gun incident. And you made a point of adding the word gun after paintball.
Well, it's a paintball gun. So
So you knew
she
this was-
reported different things of possibly being at a gun or a paintball
When did she report that?
in her 911 calls.
Okay. Could we have a copy of exhibit regarding the 911 call, please?
Which one? There were two.
Well, Judge, I think what I'm going to do is play actually both of them.
All right, those are exhibits 232A and 232B.
And Judge, I'm going to get through this before we start the 911 call. Just right there is fine. Thank you, officer. So your recollection of the 911 call is that Miss Daybell said something about a gun as well?
Yeah, she just said gun as well in that call.
Okay. Okay. But the dispatcher said it's holding a paintball gun, correct?
I believe so.
And then it says that you attempted to locate suspect but couldn't find anyone in the area, right?
Correct.
You talked to her and she said she noticed a guy standing behind her and was holding a paintball gun again, right?
Yes, sir.
That's what your statement says, right?
Yes, sir.
So the dispatch was about a paintball gun. When you spoke to her, she said it was a paintball gun. And then pulled the trigger a couple of times and then ran off. And was described as 5'11", 190 pounds, right?
Approximately, yes.
Okay, and then you didn't locate anybody, right?
Yes.
Okay. Then you, couple of months later, your story, at least your report expanded a little bit. Would that be fair?
Yes, I was asked to put more detail into it.
You were asked to put more detail into the report.
Yeah, just to be more brief about actually more detail on the report.
Who asked you to put more detail into the report?
I don't exactly remember who asked me. It was one of my supervisors.
So one of your supervisors said they needed to get more detail in the report.
Yeah, they just said be more specific.
Okay, and that was after the death of Tammy Daybell, right?
I believe so.
So this occurred on October 9th, correct?
Yes.
And Tammy Daybell died sometime shortly after that, correct?
Yes, I believe so.
And then after you did your initial report, your supervisor came up to you and said, you know, we don't have enough information in that initial report, so we need to add some more information, right?
Well, just more detail.
Okay.
For
Was this such a significant issue with a paintball gun that it required you to go back and then write a 2-3 page paragraph with more detail on it after the incident had occurred 60 days earlier?
Can you ask that again? Sorry.
Well, they put you up to putting more detail because they were trying to get you to allege that in some way there may have been a gun there. Isn't that what the police are trying to do here?
Objection, Your Honor, argumentative.
Sustained.
So you put in your report on October 9, 2019, 21:45 hours. You were talking to Tammy Daybell in front of her home, right?
Yeah, it should have been in her home.
Okay. Front room of her home.
Yeah.
Okay. Now I listened to the 911 call and I seem to recall the 911 call coming in at 21:49. So you're not quite clear on the hours that you talked to Tammy, right?
Yeah, it might have been a different timestamp. I'm not sure.
Okay. So if the 911 call says 21:49, we can rely on that reasonably well, right?
Yeah.
Okay. And then you put in your report that at 21:45, you were talking to her 4 minutes before she ever called in the 911, right?
If that's what it's saying, yeah, I guess.
Okay, well, we'll go back and listen to the recording again in a minute here, but, and her son and were sitting back with the room by the door. Okay. That I believe that led to the kitchen. They were sitting back in a room by a door.
Sitting at the back of the room by the door. They were standing there in the
Okay.
doorway.
Okay. And then you made mention of the fact, and when you revised your report a little bit, you mentioned that she was standing at the back of her car with a gun she believed to be a paintball gun. So you've added the word gun and said believed. So what you're really doing is she told you it was a paintball gun, right?
To my best knowledge, yeah.
And the 911 dispatcher said it was a paintball gun, right?
Yes, I believe so.
So why did you put that caveat in there saying believed to be a paintball gun? You knew it was a paintball gun. There was no gun there that day, was there?
I
Sustained.
Yeah, good objection. I mean, come on.
She said she screamed and her husband ran and son. So her husband and son took action. They ran out and they tried to see what was going on, correct?
I'm sorry, where are you at in the,
Middle of the news statement. Tamara stated she screamed and called for her husband and son. Okay, right?
yes,
And to your recollection, the husband and son went out and looked at the what was going on out there, correct?
as far as I'm aware, just Chad.
Okay. So from your perspective, it was unusual the way Chad acted, because when his wife said someone shot a paintball gun at him, you think it's unusual for him to run out and see what's going on, right?
No, that's not what I said.
All right. But you did say it's unusual because he stood there silently while Tamara talked to you, right? That was unusual.
Yes, it was unusual that he didn't get involved in the.
Do you know anything about Mr. Daybell's personality?
I did not.
Do you know that he's somewhat of a shy person?
No, I did not.
Okay. Do you know that he's somewhat of a humble person?
Objection, Your Honor. The attorney is testifying.
Sustained.
Okay.
Mr. Pryor, also please let him finish his answers. The court reporter's getting stressed.
Okay. And then you modified your original statement, because in your original statement, you said the shooter, according to Tammy, was about 5'10", 190 pounds. Where did you get the 6 feet tall and 200 pounds from?
I said approximately.
Okay. Well, why didn't you say what you put in your original report? Why did you add 2 inches and add extra weight on this person?
It was 2 months later. I was going off my memory.
Okay. Or is it possible that when your supervisor said we need a greater report with more detail that seems to point the finger at Alex Cox, is that why you changed it from?
Objection, argumentative, Your Honor.
Sustained.
You changed it because you didn't fit the scenario of Alex Cox, did it?
No, that's not why I changed it.
Okay. But you waited 2 months on a report before you decided to change that report, correct?
I didn't wait. I was asked to change it.
Okay. By your
Not
high,
change it, but to put more detail into it.
and I guess this more detail that you need of a paintball incident is a result of your supervisor needed more favorable information, didn't he?
Objection, argumentative.
Overruled.
Your supervisor needed more favorable information to link this to Alex Cox, didn't he?
Not to my knowledge, no.
Okay. Not to your knowledge, right?
No.
Okay. And then you say Joseph Murray, who lived kitty corner from the property, right?
Yes, he lives kitty corner.
You went over to talk to Joseph Murray, right?
Briefly, yes.
Okay. And Joseph Murray stated he was cutting wood, heard a scream, and he saw someone run around the north side of Tamara's property, right?
Yes.
Okay. Would it surprise you to learn that Joseph Murray may be telling you a different story than what you're telling this jury?
No.
Okay. That wouldn't surprise you, right?
No, it would surprise me. Sorry.
Okay. Okay. You know, did Joseph Murray hear a gunshot?
I don't know.
Well, did you
No.
bother to ask him if he heard a gunshot?
No. I
Well-
just asked him what he saw. And
So according to your testimony and your report, Joseph Murray saw somebody running, and that's an important fact, isn't it?
I don't know.
Well, it's important enough that you had to change your report and add that into the report, right? So it must be an important fact.
I guess maybe so.
Okay. But wouldn't you think it'd also be an important fact if Joseph Murray had actually heard a gunshot of some kind?
I don't think he would have heard a gunshot if it was a paintball gun.
Exactly. Exactly. So this narrative that you're trying to suggest to this jury that this was a gun, you know it was a paintball gun, don't you?
Objection, argumentative.
Sustained.
All the information that's been presented to you points that this was a paintball gun, doesn't it?
No, not necessarily.
Okay.
No, not necessarily.
Yeah, what information from the reports you gleaned at the time you investigated this suggests that this was not a paintball gun? Give me a couple of reasons why you don't think this was a paintball gun.
Just from the calls and what I've heard on the testimony from Tammy's call.
Okay. Okay. So from Tammy's call and from your report and the dispatcher saying it's a paintball gun, where did it say it was a rifle or an AK-47 or anything like that?
I never said it was.
Okay. So again, you know this was a paintball gun, don't you?
No, I don't.
Judge, I'm gonna replay the video if I can get it to work on my or excuse me, the 911 if I can get it to work.
All right, please clarify which of the two you're playing. And you may publish, but clarify which one.
232B will be first, Judge.
Yeah, Rhodes, I don't know if you saw my comment up above, but I said you should be asking my ugly house
Yeah.
that Chad once owned.
October 9, 2019, 21 hours, 49 minutes, 20 seconds.
Fremont County Sheriff's Office. Hi, I need to report something. Okay, go ahead. What's the address? Okay, at 202 North, 1900 East, the corner with the blinking yellow light on Salem Highway. Is it a suspicious person? Yes. Okay, what was he wearing? He was all dressed in black and he had a ski mask on. And he's at the blinking light now is where you saw him? No, he's gone now because I pulled up into our driveway and I was getting stuff out of the back seat of my car and suddenly he was there and he had a paintball gun and he was and he was going to shoot at me. And I kept asking him what he was doing because I could tell it was a paintball thing. Okay. And then he just kept doing it. So I yelled for my husband and then he took off running around the back of my house. Okay, give me just 1 minute. Stay on the line with me. Okay.
Judge, I'm a-
October 9, 2019, 21 hours, 50 minutes, 28 seconds.
And that was North 1900 East?
Judge, we can stop.
Yes. Okay.
And Judge, I'm done with the, so I was listening pretty carefully. I heard the word paintball gun. And I heard the word paintball thing. Would you tell me on that tape where the word gun was used
Later on
later on?
Mhm.
Oh, are you telling me there's more evidence here?
of that recording, yes.
Where's that?
More further on in that recording is she talks more.
She talks, I didn't hear that. I heard it stop.
That's because you stopped it. I
So there was mention of a gun, is that right?
believe so.
You believe so?
Yeah.
And when you first listened to this, you heard the words paintball gun, right?
In her initial statements, yes.
You heard the words paintball thing, right?
Yes.
And the dispatch said that it was a paintball gun incident, correct?
That's what she put in her notes,
Right.
yes.
And in your initial report, you said that it was a paintball gun incident, right?
Yes.
And then 2 months later, after Tammy Daybell dies and you talk to your supervisor and you don't know why he asked you to change it, you changed it and now you're talking about possibly it being a gun, right?
Objection, Your Honor, that misstates the evidence.
Sustained.
Well, the subsequent report then starts hinting at, well, maybe this was a gun, right?
No, it's
Okay.
still a paintball gun.
Okay, all right, just so we're clear. Now, were you part of the other investigation that looked at some of the other possibilities of why someone on the property would be out there roaming around? Did you talk to any of the other potential suspects in this thing?
No, I didn't talk to anybody about Tammy.
Okay, who was the other officer with you?
Deputy Simper.
Okay. Did you go down and talk to one of the neighbors about the husband of a dog kidnapper that had been causing some problems down the street, just right down the street?
Not that I can recall.
And what about the autistic child that was roaming the neighborhood? causing some issues within the neighborhood. Did you talk to that person as well?
Not that I can recall.
Okay.
He's trying to
But
introduce.
you
doubt.
agree with me finally now that this was a paintball gun incident, right?
Like I says, I don't know if it was a paintball or a gun.
Okay. All right, Judge, that's all I have. Thank you.
Mr. Wixom, redirect?
Yeah, Your Honor.
Yes.
Thank you.
Deputy Cannon, you were just asked on cross-examination a number of questions about having written the second report.
Yes.
So in reference to those questions, how long after this incident was it that you wrote the second report?
Like I said, I'm not 100% sure, maybe a couple months or so.
Is it fair to say that over the course of a couple of months, you have a number of calls and interactions with the public as part of your job?
Absolutely.
And as part of law enforcement, as a deputy, is it expected that you will conform to your superiors?
Absolutely.
So if a superior officer says, please go write another report, is that something that you would do?
Yes.
But in this case, is that what you did?
Yes.
Is there any question in this case, were you fed information to put in the report?
No, just more information about what happened.
But the information that you included in the report all came from your memory, is that fair?
Yes.
You were asked some questions about whether or not you were wearing a body cam at the time.
Yes, I was asked that.
I think you explained that at the time yours was broken.
Correct.
Can you state, is it fair to say that at Fremont County Sheriff's Office, is there any kind of policy requirement that you wear a body cam for anything?
No,
And so why do you normally wear a body cam?
just for my recollection and safety and different things like that.
But that doesn't mean you can't perform your duties without the body cam.
No, it doesn't mean that.
And what else do you do when you have an incident besides recording it on your body cam? What else do you do as law enforcement to memorialize what happened in that incident?
I don't understand. Sorry.
Why do you write police reports?
Oh, so you can remember what happens.
Okay. And when you do that, do you write these reports to the best of your recollection?
Yes.
Defense counsel pointed out that in one report, in the second report, you had noted the time that you were talking to Tammy as being 21:45. Do you remember that?
Yes.
But yet we heard in the call that her call came in at 21:49.
Yes.
Can you explain that discrepancy?
It was probably, I was dispatched at that time at 21:45 and she had called briefly thereafter
And again, when you were
when I was
right,
responding. Sorry.
finished, I'm sorry.
Sorry. When I was responding to the call, she probably made that phone call.
When you were writing that second report, were you writing it from memory?
Yes, just from my memory.
Is it possible that the 4-minute difference could have just been a function of your memory?
Absolutely.
And to be clear, you did use the word paintball gun in your report, correct?
Yes.
But yet on direct, you indicated that you were looking for shell casings.
Correct.
What made you look for shell casings?
Judge, exceeding the scope of cross.
I'll sustain that.
I disagree with that sustain.
Was there anything about the information that you received
Prior
when you
totally went
initially
there.
investigated that would cause you to rule out the possibility that it could have been a real gun?
Sorry, say that again.
Was there anything about the information that you had when you first responded that would have required you to rule out that it could have been a real gun?
No, that's just, she heard 2 pops and she screamed and so.
So as you sit there today, from the information you have, can you rule out that whatever she saw was not a real gun?
No, you can't.
You were asked a question about whether or not Joe Murray had said if he had heard a gunshot. Do you remember that question?
Yes.
Why didn't you ask Joe if he'd heard a gunshot?
I guess it just didn't cross my mind. It didn't seem important at the time.
Did Joe bring up to you in the conversation that he'd heard a gunshot?
No.
Is that something that you might have assumed he would bring up?
Possibly, or if he saw a gun or something.
This is the last question, to be clear. In the second report, did you include any information in there that had been provided to you by anybody else?
No, just from my memory.
Thank you. Your Honor, I have no further questions.
All right, that'll conclude the testimony then of Deputy Cannon.
Thank you, Judge.
Thank you. Is the state or defense intending to recall this witness?
Judge, I subpoenaed Deputy Cannon, but I'm going to relieve him of his subpoena today so that he will no longer have to show up in my case in chief. You're welcome.
Your Honor, the state is not going to recall Deputy Cannon.
Okay, that'll conclude your testimony then. Thank you for appearing this afternoon. You can be excused. And the state can call up its next witness.
Your Honor, at this time, the state would call Officer Ali Greenhall.
Okay, another officer. So that officer who just got off the stand, I believe he was being truthful. I just wish he was a more confident communicator. The way he communicated did not inspire confidence, because the way he would answer questions, he would go, yeah, maybe. He wasn't as precise as you want a law enforcement officer to be. He just didn't inspire confidence. You know what I mean? It made you feel like, maybe he didn't really know what was going on there. Maybe his memory really is bad.
All right, now that the witness has been sworn before direct, I'm going to inquire of the witness. Officer Greenhall, have you listened in on or in any way observed or heard any of the testimony that's occurred in this trial thus far?
No, I have not.
Okay, have you discussed with anyone else their testimony they've given at trial?
No, I have not.
Okay, thank you for that affirmation. Mr. Wixom, you can inquire.
Thank you, Your Honor. Officer Greenhall, I believe I'm mispronouncing your name. It's Greenhalch, isn't it?
Correct.
Okay, I apologize. Will you please spell your full name for the record?
Oh, first name is spelled Alyssa, and the last name is spelled Greenhalgh.
Thank you. And ma'am, can you tell the jury, where is it that you work?
Currently, I work in Rexburg, Idaho for the Rexburg Police Department.
What is your job title there?
I'm a patrol officer.
How long have you done that?
Total about 7 years.
7 years with the Rexburg Police Department?
About 3 with Rexburg and 4 years before that with the Fremont County Sheriff's Office.
What was your job title at the Fremont County Sheriff's Office?
I was a patrol deputy.
And can you explain to the jury what post training or otherwise do you have as a law enforcement officer?
Currently, I hold an advanced certificate through the Idaho Post Academy, as well as some other miscellaneous specialty trainings.
And as part of your work for Fremont County, was it one of your functions to respond to calls about unattended deaths?
Yes.
From your perspective as law enforcement, please tell the jury, what is an unattended death and what is your function as law enforcement?
An unattended death is, generally speaking, any death that occurs where the person is not under a physician's care. Typically, somebody will call when they find a family or friend or loved one that has passed. And my duty as a patrol officer or deputy initially on scene is to respond before the detectives and the coroner get there, to check for obvious signs of foul play, and then request resources as needed.
And when you say foul play, can you tell the jury what types of things do you look for when you're looking for signs of foul play?
Yes, so typically we're looking for obvious injuries, disheveled houses, like if furniture is broken or pushed around, obvious injuries being gunshot wounds, stab wounds, needles, drug overdoses, things like that.
So with any given unattended death, is it fair to say that you respond with that role in mind, trying to either identify or rule out some foul play?
Correct.
I want to draw your attention back to October 19th of 2019. Do you recall responding to an unattended death call for a Tammy Daybell?
I do.
At that time, prior to your response to the scene, had you ever heard Tammy Daybell's name?
No, I had not.
Had you ever heard Chad Daybell's name?
No,
So you weren't familiar with either one of them?
I was not.
Who dispatches you to an unattended death?
Whichever dispatch officer is working that day.
So is it fair to say that when there's an unattended death, that someone will call into law enforcement and 911 or otherwise, and then they'll find an officer on duty and send them to the scene?
Yes.
Your Honor, at this time, the state wishes to request admission of what we believe is a stipulated exhibit number 233, which is a recorded 911 call made by Garth and Chad Daybell on the day of Tammy's death.
Any objection? Okay, exhibit 233 then is the audio file of that call. It will be admitted by stipulation. Just make sure we have the correct exhibit submitted to the clerk, and then if you wish to publish, you may. As
Thank you, Your Honor. Would the court have me send it up now, or should I play it first?
long as you're convinced it's the right thing, you can go ahead and start publishing.
Thank you. Your Honor, would it be possible for, I think I skipped a step here, us to broadcast this over the court system by plugging my HDMI?
Sure.
Thank you.
911, where's your emergency? We're at 202 North, 1900 East.
What's going on?
We just found my mom. She's on the ground frozen, or she's stiff, and I don't know.
Are you in Madison County or Fremont County?
Well, I'm Chad, the husband. She's clearly dead.
Oh,
We don't
so
know.
sorry. Okay. Okay. Are you in Rexburg, or because your address shows
Fremont
Rexburg
County.
address, but you're in Fremont County?
It's a mile past.
Okay.
Line. Oh, no.
Okay.
Oh. Yeah, she's not even, she's frozen.
Okay. Can I get your name?
Chad Daybell. Oh, man. Oh,
Okay, Chad. I'm gonna get somebody up to you right now. Okay.
you know the corner where the blinking yellow light is with the red house?
Yes, sir. Red house on the corner.
Yes.
blinking yellow light.
Right.
Okay, we'll get somebody out to you. Okay, I'm so sorry.
Okay.
If you need anything else, you call me back. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Bye bye.
Ma'am, to the best of your recollection, was that particular phone call related to your response to Tammy Daybell?
Yes.
Prior to responding to this, let me withdraw that. To the best you recall, what time of day was it that you were responding?
It was approximately 6 a.m.
And was it light outside yet?
I don't think so.
Prior to your response that morning, approximately how many times had you personally been involved with responding to an unattended death?
Probably 5 to 10.
And when you did, in fact, arrive, what was the first thing that you observed?
I observed Garth Daybell in the living room. He's the one that let me into the house. And then Chad came into the living room shortly after I arrived. And I just asked them what was going on and to show me where Tammy was.
And did they do that?
They did.
Let me pause and ask, at that point in time, was anybody else at the home?
No,
Did anybody else later arrive at the home that morning?
yes.
Who do you recall arriving at the home?
The deputy coroner arrived, the coroner arrived, and then some family members also arrived later.
And for the jury's sake, to the best we can identify those people by name.
Yes, sorry. The deputy coroner, Cammie Wilmore, the coroner, Brenda Dye, and I'm not sure who the family was. I didn't speak with them after they arrived.
Were you aware if there was a male or female family member that arrived?
I think both. Several of his children showed up as well.
So you were explaining that you arrived and you made contact with Garth and then Chad?
Correct.
Just to help the jury have a picture in their mind, what was the layout of the home, the best that you can recall?
The living room is the first room that you come into, and then there's a hallway to the right. There are several bedrooms and a bathroom. Directly behind the living room across the hallway was the kitchen, and then to the left was the garage.
Okay. And relative to the front door, did you come in the front door?
I did.
Relative to that front door, where is the room that you ultimately saw Tammy's body in?
To the right at the end of the hallway.
When you came through the front door, where do you recall both Garth and or Chad being inside the home?
In the living room.
So could you explain again, what was the first conversation that you had with either one?
I asked them where Tammy was and what had happened, and then they walked me back to the bedroom where her body was.
At that point in time, did either one of them seem to have any emotion or anything like that going on?
Yes.
Both, or which one?
Chad was definitely more emotional than Garth was. He was sobbing and then would gasp for air. Garth was a little bit more reserved and didn't say very much.
So when you got back to the room where Tammy was, what was the first thing that you observed?
I observed Tammy's body on the bed, and her feet were hanging off the corner of the bed, and the mattress was pushed off the box spring just a little bit, and she was covered up with a blanket up to about her shoulders.
In that moment, did you notice anything else about Tammy's body?
Not from the doorway until I moved in closer to her.
Before you moved in closer, did you engage in Chad in any conversation about what had gone on?
Yes, during the walk back and while I first entered the bedroom, he was kind of explaining to me the course of events that had happened that morning.
What do you recall him explaining to you at that time?
He had told me that about midnight, Tammy had woken up with a coughing fit, and he said she had vomited on the bedroom floor and then had moved into the bathroom down the hallway and had continued vomiting. And he said he got up to help her clean up and then put her back to bed. And then they both went back to sleep. And then at approximately 5:40 a.m., he had felt the blankets shift off of him in bed, and had woken up, and he said that he had thought Tammy had fallen off the bed. So he told her to get back on the bed, and then when she didn't answer him, he stood back up, turned the lights on, and found that she was unresponsive.
Did he indicate at that point whether Tammy had fallen all the way off the bed or just partly?
He did. He indicated that she had fallen partially off the bed because her feet were wrapped in the blanket and the sheets. And so her feet were still up on top of the mattress, but the side of her head was on the floor.
What did Chad do or say next, if anything?
He said after he had turned the lights on and found her, he checked her and then called to Garth for help to come help move her back onto the bed, which Garth came over and they both moved her body back up onto the bed.
So when you first, let me withdraw that. This is being explained to you as you're walking into the room where Tammy's body is.
That's correct.
So when you first walk into that room, did what you saw with Tammy's body match the description of what Chad had just explained to you?
Yes, it did.
And what about the covers on the bed?
The covers on the bed had been pulled back up, covering her arms to about her shoulders.
When you arrived, when you got into the room, can you describe for the jury what your observations were about the condition of Tammy's body at that point?
I first checked her for a pulse, which she did not have. Her skin was colder than the room temperature. Her body was stiff. And I recognized that she did have some pink foam coming out of her mouth and down the side of her face, and she was deceased.
And you personally had made the determination for yourself that she was deceased because of her pulse, or what was the big factor?
Correct. It was a combination of her body being cold and the fact that she did not have a pulse.
And at this point in time, when you're investigating an unattended death, do you gather more information from family?
I do.
Did you do that in this case?
I did.
What did you do next?
I asked Chad about if she had any serious medical conditions or had been sick recently. He told me that she had been suffering from a pretty bad cold and that she didn't like to see the doctor very often, so that she hadn't been diagnosed with any serious medical conditions. He did tell me she had fallen in the driveway a few weeks prior that she had seen the doctor for, and she was going through menopause. He did say that she had suffered from low blood pressure and did have fainting spells once in a while as well.
And based on your recollection, was this information that Chad had relayed specifically to you at that point in time?
Yes, it was.
Did he say anything else about whether he believed that Tammy had any other major medical issues or injuries besides what you just talked about?
Not that he said to me.
Did he mention anything to you about Tammy having shaking fits at that point in time?
No.
Did he say anything about Tammy's sleep pattern generally?
No.
At what point in time, well, I'll withdraw that. As law enforcement, is it your role to determine whether or not it would be appropriate to have an autopsy?
It is not.
Whose role is that?
The coroner.
And then as you were there on scene, did you reach out to any other superior officers to get any help with your investigation?
I did.
Who did you reach out to?
I reached out to Detective Mattingly and Detective Kaya Kamanu.
And why did you reach out to them?
It's standard procedure when there's any kind of death, especially an unattended death, that we notify detectives to give them kind of the basis of what we've learned in our investigation to determine whether they need to respond or not.
Did they give you any instructions that you can recall?
Yes, they told me to take photos and then let the coroner decide whether or not to do an autopsy.
And in fact, did you take photos?
I did.
We'll get to those photos in just a moment. at that point in time, did you do anything else in your investigation?
No,
At any point in time, did you do anything to look at medications or anything else in the home?
I did.
When did you do that?
I did that shortly after I had taken some initial photos of Tammy's body while I was waiting for the deputy coroner to arrive.
And with respect to your time there and your observations, had you identified anything at that point that you felt like was suspicious about the scene?
No,
Now, were you basing that perspective upon the information that Chad was giving you?
yes,
And without getting into it, were you basing it upon any information that Garth had given you?
no, because he hadn't given me any information.
Besides Chad, did any other family members give you any information that morning?
No,
When you were talking to Chad that morning, was Garth within earshot of that conversation?
yes,
Did he ever voluntarily interject or contradict anything that his dad was saying?
he did not.
Did he try to add anything to the conversation?
No,
Your Honor, at this time, the state would like to offer up to the court and request admission of the state's proposed and marked exhibits 295A through. Sorry, Your Honor, 1 second. A through J. And I believe we have a stipulation that these will be admissible, Your Honor.
Any concern with broadcasting these, Mr. Wixom?
May we sidebar, Your Honor?
Yes.
Thank you.
So to me, right before they called a sidebar, he was sitting there with his hands folded like he is right now. It looked almost like he was trying to appear prayerful as they were talking about Tammy. Kind of prayerful, but he was also looking directly at his computer when that conversation was happening. So that was why I said avoidant, because he was just kind of sitting there real stiff. He's taking a drink of water. Could mean adrenaline causing dehydration. Possibly. They are talking about the death of his wife, and he's being tried for that death in a murder trial. Now, I keep kind of coming back to, let's say they were just trying the case of Tammy Daybell versus of the death of just Tammy Daybell and Chad Daybell. And just isolated everything around that. No worries, PKC. If they were just trying Chad for the death of Tammy Daybell, would they have enough? Is there enough? Because I know in my heart, and I could never prove this in a court of law, right? I know in my heart that he was involved in her murder somehow, right? But what did he actually physically do? What is it that the state is going to say that he did? What were the actions did he take? Did he poison her? Did he take poison from somebody else to give to her? Did he allow somebody else to poison her? And she had been embalmed. I remember from at the time, even at that time, when we learned that this woman, Tammy Daybell, was dead and she had just died of natural causes, quote unquote, and that her husband, who was now fleeing with his new wife, was nowhere to be found, and this new wife's children were nowhere to be found, that it was suspicious. It was all suspicious because he had said, bury her, embalm her and bury her. No autopsy, no autopsy. And it was like he was in a big hurry to get that all done. So a lot of that made it impossible for them to check for causes of death that they might have before she was embalmed. Right? They were able to check physical symptoms, but it changes the entire chemical makeup of your body. For sure. Yep. And you could see that, yes, Lori was definitely putting pressure on him. They've shown that. He was getting an intense amount of pressure to do something. He clearly wanted to be out of that marriage. He kept talking about being trapped in the text messages, wanting to get away. They had plans to be together forever. They were already sealed in the temple, even if it was a false, totally illegitimate sealing in the temple. They still did it. In their minds, they were sealed together forever. They had planned to be together forever. So he was just waiting for the moment to get out of there. But what specifically did they find? What specifically did they find that implicates Chad? Other than, he's the last person to see her alive, obviously. He's there when she's dead. He sends her off to get an autopsy. Did they find poison in his house? Did they find, was it the same kind of death that Alex Cox had? Well, they decided that it was that she did have a broken hyoid, I believe, and determined that it was strangulation. Or sorry, not strangulation. Follow her, get back in bed. They determined that her cause of death was asphyxiation. And asphyxiation, right, they did the autopsy when she was exhumed. So the autopsy would not be as accurate as it would have been if they would have been able to autopsy her right after she died. Yes, petechia. So that's something that happens around the eyes when you are asphyxiated. And so, strangulated. So they can see those physical symptoms, right? But I don't know if they can check the toxins. Let me just look something up real quick because I'm sort of a little bit lost on some details. One moment. So I'm reading portions of the autopsy report, okay? Yeah, blood vessels. Hey, Tessmac. Blood vessels are the...
All right, thank you, counsel. The court will note in a sidebar, we just were reviewing these exhibits that are, as I understand, going to be admitted without objection, somewhat graphic in nature. The court's determined would be inappropriate to broadcast those publicly. However, of course, they will be published to the jurors and the parties. And so we've made those arrangements for the publication of those once they're admitted. And Mr. Wixom, if you need to take a moment to get that set up, that's fine. And that's the purpose of the sidebar we just had.
Thank you, Your Honor. If I could have just a moment, please.
So they're probably going to show Tammy's autopsy now. Here's what it says. I'm about to show you what it says in the portions of the autopsy report. Oops, wrong one.
And Judge, as we attempt to get set up electronically, I need to clarify for the record, the state does not intend to admit the photos in full sequence that we gave, Your Honor. May I correct and let the court know now which exhibits we're talking about?
Yeah, let's go through the admission process and then we'll go on to publication if you wish. So on the admission process, if you would set out in the record what you're being offered, and individually I'll ask defense if there's any objection.
Thank you, Your Honor. All of these photos for frame of reference are death scene photos of Tammy at the time that this officer responded to the call. They're marked as states 295D, as in David, through 295L. This is-
Okay. Mr. Pryor, have you reviewed the photographs on exhibits 295D through L?
I have, Your Honor. My understanding, there's a stipulation to their admission.
Okay, without objection, then each of those individual photos, 295D through L, are all admitted as evidence. And in terms of publication, Mr. Wixom, if you just want to work with co-counsel, and if you need to review or view that other monitor to get things lined up, I understand the difficulty where you can't use the big screen because we're intentionally not broadcasting there. The monitors the jurors have will show the images. And Mr. Wixom, there's that light on the Elmo that I think helps with the shadow. If you could flip that light on. The
I believe I'm ready to proceed, Your Honor.
Okay, go ahead
Thank you.
and reference each one, of course, as it's published.
Will do. So, ma'am, I'm going to show you what I believe are photos that you took at the scene. The first photo that I'm going to show you is a photo. It's 295D as in David. Can you see that, ma'am?
I can.
And ma'am, could you describe for the jury what is that a photo of?
This is a photo of Tammy's body as she was lying on the bed when I arrived.
As you look at that photo, can you recall what was it that you were trying to capture in that particular photo?
The position she was lying on the bed, the positions of the blanket, as well as her face.
Next, I'm going to show you what's been marked as states 295E. And ma'am, can you describe what you were trying to capture in that photo?
With this photo, I was trying to capture a closer, more focused view of her face and the foam that was on it.
Can you explain that a little bit more to the jury?
Yes, so a closer view of her face to focus more on the pinkish foam that's running down the side of her cheek.
Why did you feel like it was important to document that?
I like to document any bodily fluids that are present.
Next, I'm going to show you what's been marked as states 295 F as in Frank. Can you tell the jury why you took that picture?
I took this photo to also show how her arms were lying when I arrived, uncovered by the blanket.
Why was it important to document how her arms were lying?
It's important just to document everywhere of how she's lying as she was when I get there, uncovered from the blanket, because from the initial photos, when she's covered, you can't see how her body is actually lying.
Okay.
Tiggy girl, this is the
Next, I'm going to show you what's been
first
marked as
responder after
states
somebody's death.
295 G as in George. Please explain to the jury why you took that photo.
I took this photo because at this point, the coroner had arrived and she was completely uncovered from the blankets. So just another full body photo to show how she was lying on the bed.
Earlier, you had indicated that the mattress had been moved from the box spring.
Correct.
Does this photo capture that?
It does a little bit.
Can you explain that a little bit more for the jury's sake?
Yes, so on the top right of the photo, you can see that the mattress is shifted a few inches off of the box spring below it.
Why was that significant to document?
Typically, that isn't how your bed is laid out, and it was consistent with Chad stating that they had lifted her body back onto the bed, and that had shifted the mattress a little bit when they did that.
When Chad explained that they put the body back on the bed, had he explained that this is the position that they'd last left it in?
That's correct.
Hey, Destined. So it does seem like it's possible that
Next, I'm going to
there
show
were
you what's
people.
been marked as states Exhibit 295H. Ma'am, can you take a moment and explain to the jury why you took that picture?
I took this photo to get a clear portrait of the other side of her face, as well as her hair and her left ear, which had a little bit of discoloration.
Does this document the discoloration in her left ear?
Or her right ear, I'm sorry.
So you're noting discoloration in the right ear?
Yes, it's a little bit red.
Can you just be a little bit more precise for the jury's sake where you see that discoloration?
Yes, the top of her ear is a little bit more red than the bottom part of her ear, which is a little bit more pale.
Was that anything that cued you into anything as part of your investigation?
Not particularly, no.
Next, I'm going to show you states 295L. Sorry. 295I. And why did you take that photo?
I took this photo because it was a little bit closer up of her face where you can see some blood around her nose and mouth, and then some more purple discoloration in the middle of her ear.
When you say blood around her nose and mouth, is that in reference to the sputum or some other source of blood?
It's in reference to the sputum.
Does this picture document from your perspective which direction you believe that sputum had been flowing from her?
Yes.
can you explain to the jury what you believed it shows?
It shows that it flowed down the left side of her face.
And did you find that at the time to be consistent with the way that Mr. Daybell had explained that she had been positioned in the bed and fallen out of the bed?
Yes.
Next, I'm going to show you Exhibit 295J. Why did you take that picture?
I took this photo to show the foam and blood running down the left side of her face.
At this point, why did you need to take this picture of the foam running down that side of her face?
Because I had never responded to an unattended death that had foam coming out of the mouth, so I felt it was important to document.
What was your intention of taking yet this photo when you had some other photos already of the pink foam?
This one specifically showed a little bit more of the blood running down the side of her face and not just the foam.
And at that point in the photo, being there in real time, could you tell if that blood running down her face had it dried? Any change in color at all?
I don't think I checked that at the time.
Next, I'm showing you 295K. Why'd you take that picture?
I took this photo because at this point the coroner had arrived and some of the fluid from her face had been cleared off. So I just took another photo after it had been cleared off.
When you say because the coroner had arrived, did the coroner give you any instruction about other photos that you should take?
No,
So you did this at your own behest?
I did.
Lastly, I'm going to show you what's been marked as states 295L. Can you please explain to the jury, please, why you took this photo?
I took this photo because at this point she had been moved to the mortuary and some time had passed. And so I took this photo to show some bruising and color changes that had happened on her skin.
When you say bruising, can you identify in that photo where you believe the bruising had identified itself?
Yes, on the top of her forehead showed a little bit more bruising, as did her mouth and her neck, chest area.
And at this point, do you see the pink foam in there anywhere?
I do not.
Have you done anything to wipe or remove the pink foam at that point?
I did not.
Based on your observations, did you check Tammy's body to see if it was cold?
I did.
And the result?
Her body was colder than the room temperature when I checked it.
Did you notice whether or not she had rigor mortis set in?
I did. Her body was stiff, which is consistent with that being set in from my experience.
In addition to noticing the pink sputum and what you thought was bruising, did you notice anything else on her body at any point?
I did.
What'd you notice?
After the coroner arrived and we had moved the blankets off her body, I did notice lividity on the back of her legs and on the lower back as well.
Can you explain to the jury, in case they don't know, what does the word lividity mean?
Lividity means when you pass, the blood in your body will pool to the lowest part and cause kind of reddish bruising, which is referred to as lividity.
And once again, where did you identify that lividity?
On the back of her thighs and on the back of the small of her back.
from your perspective, what did that tell you?
That told me from my experience that she would have been lying on her back for a significant amount of time after she died.
Now, at some point, did you, I'll withdraw that.
I did.
And what was discussed there?
The cause of death was discussed, as well as whether an autopsy was to be performed, and as well as things that were said to the coroner.
Okay. And again, your role as law enforcement, do you have any role in determining cause of death?
No, I do not.
And do you have any role, as you understood it, to determine whether an autopsy should be performed?
No,
Did you ever discuss the potential for an autopsy with Chad?
no,
Did you ever hear him discuss that with anybody on scene?
no.
Mr. Rickson, are you done publishing the photos?
I am, I'm sorry.
If you are, go ahead and we'll turn the lights back up. We'll keep the audience seated where they are for the remainder of the day.
So I think just the last couple of questions, ma'am. Did you eventually do any kind of medication check at that home?
I did.
Did you determine whether or not you believed Ms. Daybell had been on any medications?
Yes.
What did you determine that she was on?
I was told by Chad that she did take fluoxetine for depression, and then some natural remedies and over-the-counter medications as well.
Was there any evidence, as far as you're concerned, that she could have been overdosed on something?
No,
And with respect to anything else about that investigation that caused you any concern about anything suspicious at that point in time?
no, there was not.
You know, that's all the questions I have at this time.
All right.
Okay, Mr. Pryor. I have not heard anyone say anything about compression asphyxiation, but one report I was just reading from the last trial was saying that
Well, I'm going to do it over this. That's fine.
her injuries were consistent with being restrained and asphyxiated.
All right. Cross-examination, Mr. Pryor.
Thank you, Judge.
Right. Okay. 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 Okay, 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 okay. Right.
Officer Greenhall, you prepared a report in regards to this incident, is that right?
Yes,
And at the bottom of your report, you made mention that the coroner determined an autopsy was not necessary unless the family wanted one, which they did not.
correct.
So from what I read from your report was that you discussed the option of whether an autopsy would be performed, and the coroner determined that it wasn't necessary. And then subsequent to that, the family decided they did not want an autopsy. Would that be fair?
Yes,
Okay, thank you. Now, I also noted, did you have a chance to talk to Brenda Dye and Cammy and Deputy Coroner Wilmore about this case in detail?
At the scene I did, yes.
Okay, did you discuss the fact that there were some old bruises on Tammy's arms?
Yes,
And that, were you aware that Coroner Dye made note of that they were old, from some time before this incident, bruises on both of her arms as well, correct? She just testified to it, Judge.
Overruled.
Fact that Miss Dye noted in her coroner's report that there were old bruises on her arms, correct?
I wasn't aware if she knew the age of them.
Okay, but you are aware that there was a discussion with you folks about the fact that there were some old bruises on Tammy's body, correct?
That there were bruises, correct?
You were also aware that when you looked for the medication, you saw the it's Prozac, right? Fluoxetine?
I'm not sure what the generic is.
Okay. Acetaminophen, right? Some ibuprofen?
Correct.
Vitality extracts, which are, like non-traditional medication, correct?
Correct. And like essential oils.
Like essential oils that she would use. And then Chad talked to you a little bit about the fact that she was experimenting with essential oils as well, right?
Correct.
Okay. And then some extra strength acetaminophen. There was also some cough medicine that was found there as well, correct?
Yes.
And that's important because when Chad first spoke with you, he said that she was having coughing fits, right?
He did.
And you were able to confirm the fact that there was cough medicine as part of the medicine that was at the table at least at that evening, correct?
Correct.
You weren't able to tell whether she took it or not that night, but clearly on her side of her bed, there was cough medicine, right?
Correct.
Okay. And then again, some essential oil. What is essential oil respiratory blend? I don't understand what respiratory blend means when it applies to essential oils.
That's what the bottle was labeled.
Did you happen to look into what that's for?
I did not.
Well, the word respiratory implies to me that there has something to do with breathing. You didn't look any further than just noting that it was it was some respiratory essential oil.
Correct.
Okay. And then below that one, you put a note that there was also a supplement for bruising and sore muscles.
Yes.
So she was taking supplements for some bruising that she must have been experiencing and sore muscles, right?
I assume so.
Okay. Well, those are the ones that the family showed you were that she was taking regularly, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Now, again, I'll go back to what he initially told you that she got up at about midnight, right?
Correct.
Military time always confuses me. So 0000, right?
Yes. That's midnight.
And then at approximately 5:40, he felt the bed and she slid off the bed. And that's when he realized that she had passed, right?
Yes. That's what he told me.
Okay. And he was pretty shook up about this, wasn't he?
Yes.
Far more shook up than anybody else in the house, right?
Yes.
He was more disturbed about this than his daughter who eventually showed up, right?
Asked and
I
answered.
didn't see or observe his daughter after he showed up.
He was far more despondent than his son who was there as well, right?
Correct.
Okay. And what you observed in terms of the mattress, in terms of the position of the mattress, was consistent with what Chad told you in terms of why the mattress was moved. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So there's nothing unusual about the mattress, nothing there, correct?
Correct.
Okay. And as far as medical conditions, again, while he was discussing with you, he was pretty despondent, pretty upset, right?
Yes.
Okay. And as well, he was trying to talk to you. He made something that she had taken some steroid shots for some sore muscles, that she had fallen a few months ago in the driveway and injured her arm. Did he happen to mention to you that she was having incidents of falling, unexplained falls that she was making?
Not that I remember.
Don't remember that? You didn't have a body cam on either, though, did you?
I did not.
You didn't have a recorder with you either, right?
No.
And you were going to an unattended death. Are you issued a body cam?
I was.
Are you issued a recorder?
No,
Okay, so you are issued a body cam, it wasn't available, or was that one broken too?
I believe it was charging at the time.
Okay, all right. And then he mentioned that she had been feeling sick, had a cold, and that she had low blood pressure and that she'd been fainting occasionally.
Yes,
Okay. Now, did he ever mention to you the fact that Tammy Daybell suffered from anemia?
not that I recall.
Okay. When you looked at the pink foaming, did you happen to do some research on what causes that pink foaming?
I did not.
Okay, so you're not aware of the medical condition someone would have that would cause their mouth to foam at the mouth, right?
I'm not.
Okay. At the time you showed up, there were no bruising on the neck or the arms, like recent bruising. Is that correct?
Correct.
And there was no indication of a struggle, correct?
Correct.
And there was nothing in the position of the pillows or the sheets or anything in the bedroom that would indicate there was any sort of a fight, struggle, or altercation within that bedroom. Is that right?
Correct.
And then he also told you, Chad told you that through the coroner that Tammy had an occasion to have minor shaking fits, right?
He did say that to the coroner, not to me though.
With seizures, right?
I'm not 100% certain what
Okay.
he said.
And then were you there to talk to the daughter Emma?
No,
But you put in your report that Emma mentioned that her and her mother were trying to do that clogging thing, and that her mother had been slowing down the last couple of months. You're aware of that as well, right?
yes, that was relayed to me through the coroner.
So the mother or the daughter Emma had confirmed that her mother had been slowing down and wasn't as active as she had been previously, right?
Not to me.
Okay. But Chad did talk to you about significant fainting, seizures, a number of maladies, right?
He had mentioned fainting. He didn't mention seizures to me though.
Man, Pryor is so
Chad
dirty.
told the
He's always
coroner that
putting-
sometimes Tamara had minor shaking fits consistent with seizure activity.
he's throwing
That was what the coroner.
Oh,
told
I'm
me.
sorry.
he's throwing misinformation out there all the time. It's really bothersome. He puts words in their mouth.
So at this point, after this was done, it was the determination made that it was not a homicide or any foul play as a result of this, correct?
I'm not sure exactly what the determination was that was made by the coroner.
Okay, and we'll get to that with the coroner, but from your pictures and your assessment, it didn't appear that there was any foul play from the pictures that you took. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. Judge, I have nothing else. Thank you.
Any redirect?
Just a few, Your Honor, a few questions.
Very well.
Tiggy girl, they're gonna have the coroner come on and report, testify about this. So
Officer Greenhall, you were just.
We'll get the
asked some
actual medical
questions
report.
about a body cam.
Correct.
At that time at the Fremont County Sheriff's Office, was there any requirement that you have and use a body cam for any purpose?
No.
And you said yours was charging.
Yes.
Does that happen sometimes during your shift?
Yes.
You were asked some questions about, right question about by the time you showed up to the scene. Do you remember that reference from defense counsel?
Yes.
And you were asked questions about essential oils and some non-prescription items that were found.
Yes.
Now, did you have any information outside of what Chad had told you about whether it was Tammy who'd been using those things?
Not outside of what Chad had told me.
Did you have any information other than what Chad told you about how long those items had been in the home?
No.
And to be clear again, at the time that you responded, Tammy was cold to the touch.
Yes.
And as far as you knew, she had had rigor mortis set in.
Yes.
You were just asked questions about having been told by Chad, the coroner having been told by Chad that Tammy had been having seizures. Remember that question?
Yes, I do.
But to be clear, that was never told to you directly.
That's correct.
So then is it accurate then that Chad told you some things and then told other things to the coroner?
Yes.
Your Honor, I don't have any further questions.
All right, thank you. That will conclude then the testimony of this witness. Is the state intending to recall Officer Greenhouse?
I'm sorry.
Will the state be recalling the witness? No, all right, the defense.
And Judge, I also subpoenaed Officer Greenhall to be there, but I'm going to excuse her from that subpoena. She won't need to show up, and I think we've covered everything that we need to cover at this point.
All right, so that excuses you from any further subpoena. You're released from those. Thank you for appearing to testify. And you may step down from the witness stand. I don't believe there were any exhibits up there with her. Counsel for the state, do you want to get started on another witness?
So sorry. We certainly have a witness available, but given the time, would the court have us go ahead and call that witness?
Let me have a real quick sidebar to discuss whether that makes sense.
All right, they're going to decide whether to keep going today. And we shall see. It's interesting how this court, it's been interesting to witness how different courts manage themselves, the kind of hours they keep, whether they keep a tight schedule. I think this court keeps shorter hours than any other court I've ever witnessed so far in terms of my coverage of court cases. Lots of bankers hours going on. Now, it's possible that there's a hearing after this. Last time I exited out of the stream, there was actually a pretty interesting hearing that took place that I missed. So I'm going to stay on stream after they dismiss the jury just to make sure that we don't miss another crazy hearing. I'm pretty sure Tammy's family is
All right,
present.
counsel, we just did discuss scheduling, given the next witness that's coming up and where we are and where we would need to end for the day. I think it's a logical time to break for the afternoon and not divide that witness's testimony up over 2 days. So for that, we will go ahead and conclude for the evening a bit early. Thank you for going through without an afternoon break, ladies and gentlemen of the jury. We are going to conclude then. We'll continue tomorrow morning at 8:30 with additional testimony on the state's case in chief. I will admonish the jurors again as you break for the day. Please make sure to not discuss this case and the evidence with each other or with anyone else on this break. Please don't do anything to investigate the case, look the case up, or follow any news or media about the case until we reconvene tomorrow morning. Thank you as always for appearing on time each day, and we'll make an effort to get started on time tomorrow at 8:30. With that, then anything further we need to bring up this afternoon before we break for the day from the state?
No, Your Honor.
Anything further from the defense?
No, Your Honor, thank you.
Okay, thanks all, and thanks everyone in attendance today for complying with the courtroom conduct order. We'll be in recess until tomorrow.
All right. Well, there we have it. They are done for the day. They are done for the day. And yeah, Chad, this is basically what Chad was looking like most of that testimony. He's stiff and tight and arms crossed in front of him. Lots of, self-comforting. Lots of self-comforting with his arms. Oh, get out of this here. Yay. It sounds like possibly they're going to have the coroner come up next. That seems like the logical next step in this timeline. Because, you know, they just talked about the first responders' observations and reports, and now we'll probably get the coroner's observations and report, and that should be fairly enlightening. Thank you for being here, Tess Mac. I appreciate everybody being here. I do really enjoy is not the right word. I appreciate being able to watch these trials with you all. Yeah, exactly, Tiggy girl. He was so upset that he married somebody 2 weeks later. He was so despondent. He was the only despondent person in the room that day. But then he got married 2 weeks later. And it's, you know why? His explanation would be, well, I knew she was going to die. We always knew she was going to die. Oh my goodness. I had a vision. I had a vision that she was going to die. Which part is spoken like a true PR person? Well, I don't mean, what I mean is by enlightening is whatever the coroner found, or whether it's the medical, if it's a medical examiner, it might be more interesting. But sometimes they were basically saying that the next person who testifies is going to take a while. So I'm assuming that they're just going to substantiate more of what the first responder just said. The last part where I chose my wording carefully. I try. I don't always get to choose my wording perfectly or carefully, but I do very much try. I very much try. So, no solo. I hadn't seen that about a woman driving into a birthday party. I will look into it. It sounds horrible. Okay. Oh, you know what, Tiggy girl? You're reminding me. I saw a interview with that coroner. Nate Eaton did an interview with that particular coroner. She's a female, like a, you know, in her 30s woman. And she and coroners are elected. So coroners are responsible for the, you know, just the body, making sure that all the once there's a death, that everything is taken care of around the body and investigations around that, but not the actual autopsy. So there's somebody else who does the autopsy, but the coroner is present for the autopsy, if I recall correctly from that interview. She was present for it, but didn't conduct it, if that makes sense. So, state may rest by the end of this week. It would be nice if the state rested by the end of this week. Then we could focus fully on Karen Reed's trial, which is starting next week. But I'll still stick to this trial primarily while doing updates on Karen Reed's trial until this one's over. I mean, for this trial, one thing we have in our advantage is we know that the previous defendant was found guilty. The verdict was guilty. Flying down the road. Oh God, man. Swanboat Lake Club, Michigan. You know, I noticed that was trending somewhere, but I didn't look into it because I was doing other stuff. But anyway, are the kids okay? Are the kids okay? Now I'm worried about these kids that this driver drove her car into. Oh God, 2 siblings killed, 15 injured. Jesus. Jesus. Oh my God. Well, I'll look at that later. So depressing. So anyway, we will continue tomorrow. I will see you here tomorrow. Look out for my notification, my schedule notification. And we will continue testimony, and we'll see how they continue to explore the death of Tammy Daybell, a 2-year-old trapped underneath the car. My God. And just as a reminder, just not that I need to remind my people, my lovely people in my chat, but there's a lady we've been talking about, and they did start a foundation in her memory. So hugs to everyone. Have a wonderful rest of your day, and I will see you for continued state's evidence tomorrow. Love you all. Have a great rest of your day. Bye.